Can there possibly be some benefits to being a victim of emotional incest or some form of child abuse growing up? That's something we think about very often. I want to examine just that on today's Ask a Shrink. So hi everybody, I'm Brad Shore. I'm a licensed therapist. Welcome to today's Ask a Shrink. And I do want to talk about the silver lining to being a victim of abuse, if we can use that term, silver lining. Now we know any kind of abuse is horrific and no one's going to volunteer to be a victim of some sort of abuse at all. We don't want that. It's destructive. It causes nothing but some form of pain or suffering in the victim's life. However, as one gets older and matures and is willing to look inward and possibly do some therapeutic work and understand themselves more deeply in terms of what they went through, there can indeed be some silver linings. The ability to have empathy is the first silver lining for a victim of any kind of child abuse. We get it. We understand. We have been in this tremendous, painful, horrible time of our life. And what that does is teach kids of abuse the depth of understanding of what it's like to be there. It is horrifying. And when you come out of that, when you're able to claw your way out of that tunnel or that hole when you get older, you're able to empathize with people who are there, with people who are stuck there as adults, or kids who are currently going through it at this time in their life. We get it. And that empathy can lead you in so many ways to being the hero, to being the rescuer, to being the one who goes and talks to schools and tries to educate students and their parents and so on. Or motivates you to go be a therapist where you can talk to groups or do one-on-one or family therapy to help people that are going through it or have gone through it. Or empathy in the most simple form of just being kinder to people in everyday life, because we know what it's like to have been suffering. We get it. And that empathy is such a wonderful feature in terms of a silver lining, because it brings depth to one's life. It brings so much incredible meaning to be able to have empathy for people. It's a true blessing to be empathic, and that can be a result of being a victim of some form of abuse. Another silver lining is the ability to listen. And that's because kids of abuse had to listen. They had to be on guard to the point of where they were walking on eggshells a lot of the time. And that's part of being a victim of abuse, is you can never really relax and you're on high stress mode all the time. However, you had to really listen, and that training can benefit you later in life. Now, of course, if you're raised by a drunk father, you had to listen for when he's coming home and he's going to go into one of his rages. If you were sexually molested by a parent, you had to listen for that bedroom door opening. If you're afraid of a particular aunt or uncle in terms of getting a physical beating, you were listening and looking for signs about when this may occur and how to best protect yourself. Or for kids of emotional incest, you became a listener because you were forced to be a listener. You had to be the listener to the perpetrator, to the parent who emotionally smothered you, because that was your role. That's what you had to do. You had to listen to all their adult problems. So you became really good at listening. That's part of the reason I became a therapist, is because I was trained in that role early on as a child. So I'm a really good listener, I will tell you that much. But these listening skills can truly benefit you as an adult because you're zoomed in, you're able to be focused, be in the moment, and really hear what's going on in many different angles, which can only help you in life in all kinds of ways. It can help you in your career, it can help you in your relationships and any kind of interaction with other people. It can help you be on in terms of your presence, you're getting it, you're aware of your surroundings, because as a child you had to be aware of your surroundings. So that's another potential benefit, a silver lining of being a child who was raised in an abusive situation. Another benefit later in life that you come to realize is you're a great problem solver, because you had to fix things and problem solve when you were a kid, more so than kids who are raised in healthy homes. With all the chaos going on and the turmoil, maybe sometimes actually afraid for your physical life, or having to go scavenge for food, no one to help you with basic responsibilities of everyday life, nobody there to rescue you, being in a state of fear so much, sometimes daily, you had to become a problem solver to survive. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here right now listening to this video. So you got yourself through it on your own. That's called problem solving. And that's called a strength. That is a strength in your life that you now have as an adult because you learned it as a kid. It's part of your foundation. So talk about being able to multitask, if we want to use that word as well. You're good at problem solving in terms of you're able to put out fires, you're able to see ahead, you're able to do what's best for you because you're assessing and you're continually looking. You're doing things by trial and error method because it may have meant your survival. That is called problem solving. You bring that into your adult life, that is making lemonade out of lemons. You're also good at reading people and almost kind of being like a little spy. You're good at seeing through what's really going on because you had to do that as a kid. You had to see where maybe some goodness was coming from, maybe where some negativity was coming from. You had to be able to read and see where fear was coming from, and you had to be able to read and see where an openness was coming from. Another strength later in life is you're really good at living with ambiguity. I mean, think about it. Your whole life growing up was ambiguous. You probably couldn't control anything. You had to continually modify yourself, whether it was being a chameleon, a people pleaser, you're walking on eggshells, maybe you literally were running away sometimes. Whatever it was, you had to live in this state of ambiguity, and that is a strength now because as an adult, many adult situations about living in that gray area, about ambiguity. And some people have trouble with that. They want things to be black and white. Well, life is not black and white. Life is about so much living in that gray area, and being a victim of some form of childhood abuse has prepared you for that in your adult life. Ambiguity is about being open to more than one interpretation, one exact definition of something. That's what ambiguity is. And the last strength that often happens to children who grow up, do the work, do the therapy to understand themselves, the strength that they can latch onto that comes from a traumatic childhood is they have a strong sense of resilience. They have a lot of resiliency in life in general because, again, they had to be that way when they were a kid. You had no choice but to adapt to a horrible home life when you were younger. And so you had to come up with your own coping mechanisms depending on what kind of abuse was going on in your household. You learned to survive. If you didn't, you wouldn't be watching this video right now. So you learned to survive, and so you're demonstrating resiliency. You hung in there, you lasted. And that resiliency can help you in adult life, maybe at your career, for example. Sometimes we have to come up with behaviors that we have to change behaviors to help us adapt to a new situation. For example, maybe a new work environment, but we can apply this to any area of our life. And if we can't adapt, then we don't really have resiliency, and then we may fall through the cracks and really suffer for that because we're not able to keep up with what's needed to have some degree of success in our life, depending on what area of life we're talking about. You probably wouldn't have that resiliency that you have right now if you weren't a victim as a child. So I hope this has been helpful in helping some of you who are victims of some form of abuse. I know for me, it was mostly emotional incest, which wiped away my identity because I had to focus on the needs of my parent. And it's a lifetime of work to overcome that. But with some work, with being in therapy, with going inward, with trying to understand yourself, you can flourish and grow and thrive as an adult because you're making lemonade out of lemons. Please leave me some comments below. I'd love to hear your story. Please share that if you'd like to. Please subscribe to my mental health YouTube channel if you like these kind of videos. And until next week, this is Brad Shore signing off from Ask a Shrink.